It is overtime here again at Old Favorite Friday, discussing incredible classic beers and giving them the love and the respect that they so rightfully deserve. And this brewery, Boulevard, has for if you're a craft beer aficionado, you have to know about Boulevard Brewing. They've been doing incredible craft beers in the U.S. for a long time. This is their sixth glass quadrupel. I got it out there eventually. Now, it's kind of surprising that we haven't talked about this beer before on Old Favorite Friday. We've been doing this for over 3 years with how much we love Boulevard and the fact that we love Belgian quads because we make Belgian quads. We're a Belgian-inspired brewery as well. And I'm happy that I'm always happy when we find a gem, a beer that's really easy to talk about because I really, really respect the brewery and really, really respect the beer. And the reason why I respect this beer so much is that it gives off the nuances of a traditional Belgian quadruple. And what do I mean by that? A lot of American breweries really have a hard time controlling the natural esters that come out of Belgian yeast, and they can have a hard time putting the right amount of candy sugar and controlling those like over-the-top fig and raisin flavors and controlling the overall sweetness of the beer. If you are not careful, you can make what I would call a cloying, undrinkable beer that is just one-dimensional, one note. And, of course, Boulevard doesn't do that because they're a great brewery. But this is just that old world style where you have the nuances of fig and raisin, you have hints of caramel, maybe a little bit of baker's chocolate, you're getting molasses, you're getting all these different complex and interesting flavors, all well balanced without one dominating the other. And most importantly, that perception of sweetness that leaves you with a relatively dry finish. When you try a lot of American quads, and especially on like some of the smaller places or even like local brew pubs when they're doing these beers, and you try it next to something by St. Bernardus or something by Chimay, something by one of the classic breweries out there, if you're talking about Rochefort, you will notice that there's so much more sweetness in those beers because controlling that Belgian yeast strain and kind of getting it to ferment out properly and attenuate properly can be a little bit difficult, especially when it's not the thing you do the most often. And in general, people see quads and they see a beer like this that's 10.2% alcohol and a beer that's dark in color, and they think it's going to be so heavy. It's going to be so heavy. It's just going to be overwhelming. And yes, there should be medium to full body in a quadruple, but it should not be as thick as a super extracted imperial stout. There should be drinkability to a 10.2% Belgian quad. You can actually see it in the color here. It's not complete. There's some see-through nature of it. There are some red hues in here. It's more of a dark brown than a black. And another thing I see in a lot of American breweries is that they use too much candy sugar, and they'll make these beers almost like stouts, as far as like or imperial stouts, I should say, as far as the body style. But no, these beers were meant to pair well with food. They're meant to be drinkable on their own, and not to be that cloying, sweet, just massive extracted beer. The flavor complexity in this beer is kind of on point. And once again, nothing that we wouldn't expect from a brewery like this. They've been doing this beer, I believe, since around the time they opened. I was doing some research on it. And it seemed like this beer came out in 1989. The brewery opened in 1988. Some of that information may not be accurate. I do use ChatGPT from time to time to try to come up with information that I can't find otherwise. So forgive me on that. But it just goes to show you this brewery has been around since the late 80s. They are one of the pioneers in American craft beer. And the fact that they've been making a quadruple this long, a lot of breweries, especially back in the day, got into the Belgian styles because they are classic styles. They are incredibly flavorful. They're interesting. They're unique. But as the American palate changed over time, they've kind of gone away from some of those Belgian styles. I have so much respect for a brewery like Boulevard to continue to kick out a great drinkable, authentic Belgian quad after all these years and keep it in their rotation. They even do a barrel-aged version of this, which is absolutely fantastic as well. So if you have a chance to pick that up, I highly recommend that. If you've had this and not that one, you're missing out on that. But it warms my heart to see people continuing to put this kind of love and care into a style of beer that, quite frankly, has fallen off over the years. Malt-driven beers like this, without a bunch of adjuncts, they're just not that popular. I wish they were. Hopefully, we always talk about maybe those beers, that beer style will come back. And if it does, this will be one of the pioneers in doing that and keeping that front and center in the minds of the American beer consuming public. Yeah, dynamite. When we talk about food and beer pairings with this, a lot of times people will go back to like blue cheese or rich like Rochefort cheese. that goes well with a quad, and I think that goes really well with a quad. That you can't go wrong with it. I used to work at a restaurant that did a New York strip steak with a blue cheese compound butter, and I just think it would be perfect here. But to go a little bit different or give you a different option there that's just not kind of like run of the mill, I'd like to do this with a chili. And one of the reasons why I like to do this with chili, and especially something with like a gamier meat, something like venison, is because some of the flavors in chili really do well with a little bit of extra sweetness. And because there's that fig and that raisin will lend some really interesting flavors to the chili, and the flavors in chili will bring out more of kind of the phenols and some of the other underlying flavors, I believe, that comes out of this Belgian yeast strain. So those are two great options to pair with a beer like this. But I'm telling you, I mean, you don't have to be limited to just desserts. A lot of times people see with imperial stouts or quadruples kind of darker beers that might have a little bit of residual sweetness. They think you have to stick with a dessert for a pairing, and there's some great pairings out there for desserts. This will go wonderfully with a chocolate cake. But there's tons and tons. Roasted duck with a port wine demi-glace would go really, really well here. So there's a lot of things you can do. These beers were designed to pair well with food, just like in Italy and France, wines were designed to pair well with foods. It's the same thing with classic style Belgian beer. So give it an opportunity if you want to try that out. Thank you guys, as always, for joining me. Please keep your suggestions coming in about incredible beers that we can talk about for Old Favorite Fridays. Beers that have been around for a long time, beers that sometimes are ubiquitous. We forget how absolutely fantastic they are. And then we'll see you next time. Cheers.